Hello guys, e aí pessoal do Privacidade, eu tô aqui com... Qual é o seu nome?
Ian Sagstetter.
Isso, Ian é criador do Zcash Hub, está envolvido em diversos projetos open source, palestrante em diversas conferências internacionais, esteve recentemente numa conferência da Ethereum na Europa, está aqui com a gente hoje na Zcon4 Barcelona, também foi palestrante lá na Zcon Vozes no Brasil, e cara, ele está envolvido com diversas comunidades, tanto Bitcoin, Monero, enfim, a própria Zcash mesmo, e tem criado tem sido cabeça aí de parte de grandes projetos open source. Eu vou perguntar para ele algumas coisas relacionadas à privacidade, quais são as expectativas dele. A palestra dele ontem foi muito interessante sobre como que a comunidade de privacidade deve receber, fazer o onboarding das novas pessoas que estão se envolvendo em privacidade, o que deve ser falado. Então foi sensacional, vou deixar com vocês também a palestra dele aqui na descrição. So Ian, thank you for accepting this interview. So I would like to ask
I think it's funny because I wish I could speak Portuguese well enough because I understood all of that, but I can't actually so yeah, maybe one day we'll be able to do this in Portuguese.
Okay,
maybe
one day. Would be great. But yeah, your Spanish is good too. Your English is good as well.
Yeah, so we can do it in English.
We do it in English. So how do you started the Zcash Hub? What you was thinking about? Because it's about open knowledge.
Yep.
It's about privacy too, community.
Yep.
So probably you could have some experience that we as a privacy map, we need to try to implement as a community as well.
So I think the big thing is, right, so I was working at this company called the Electric Coin Company. If you're not familiar with like the Zcash ecosystem, the Electric Coin Company are one of the main developers and maintainers of the Zcash protocol. So I was working there doing like some community management stuff and some communication stuff. And I was just thinking about different models that would bring people into the community and not just bring them in from an interest perspective, but how we can get people to be actively using Zcash.
I need to get back. How you started in Zcash?
How to start in Zcash? Yeah, I think I've known about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. since around like 2017-ish. That's when I first heard about it. I think I bought Bitcoin on Coinbase in 2018, 2017. But I never
not
really
at all. Not private at all.
No. And I never paid any attention to it. And then because I was really broke. I used to like play and coach soccer, or football, as they say it in other countries, but soccer in the US.
Yeah.
And I was really broke, so I never like had any money to like put into crypto. So when I started like working and like...
It was the playmaker at soccer.
I wasn't the playmaker. I played center back, so I just stood in the back and yelled at people. But like, as I had like a regular job, quote unquote, and started making a little bit more money, I started like thinking, oh, these things are interesting, maybe I want to buy them. So I started like putting some money into like Ethereum and stuff. And then you kind of go through that process of taking it out and downloading a wallet, and this is like a few years later. So this is maybe around like 2020, 2021 when the bull market started coming into play. And you start doing stuff on chain and you're buying NFTs and all this crazy jazz, right? And then I made the mistake of attaching my ENS name to the Ethereum wallet that had like the very little bit of ETH that I had, and I was so proud to own it. But then like people will be able to see my wallet and be like, oh, he's poor, like, and I thought like that's a huge issue. I don't want people to know how much money I have. So then I started looking into like what are the privacy tools that are available. So like there's Tornado Cash to like maybe run stuff through like mixers and whatever. And I never really used that, but I looked at it. It was interesting. And then I saw like Zcash, Monero, and Dash were a thing because they usually I don't know much about Dash.
Even Litecoin have some privacy.
Yeah, and they usually include Dash in that group. And then I just was kind of looking into Zcash and Monero, and I don't know why I decided to start following Zcash more. I don't know why.
About the technology?
I don't know. Because I'm not super well versed in like the technical side, and they both kind of felt like when you don't really know the difference between Monero's privacy stack versus Zcash's privacy stack, I think people just kind of maybe pick one, right? Because it's like you're researching about stuff you're trying to learn, and there's just so much information and different opinions and different debates.
And when you look about the community or about how is handled the ecosystem, probably people have some
because I was like trying to like, obviously I was doing stuff on chain, so I was starting to like try to contribute to DAOs and different things on Ethereum, and like Discord was a really big thing, and I don't think any of the Monero community has like a Discord. I think they're all on like Matrix, which is totally fine now. Like now that I'm like more experienced with like the privacy side and whatever, like totally get the reasoning behind that. But Zcash had like Discord, so I think I maybe joined a Zcash Discord and then started following the project, and started like trying to use it, and then obviously got involved, and from there I wrote I was like writing on stuff in DAOs and like writing a few blog posts. I wrote a blog post on Zcash, and then I think I'd been DMing Zuko and Josh throughout this time about getting a job, and eventually I got very lucky that they gave me a chance. I think that was it. So kind of, sorry, that was all over the place. Summarize it up. Interested in Bitcoin from like 2017, like buying it on Coinbase or whatever. Started doing stuff on chain with like Ethereum in the last bull market. Realized while using it the privacy leaks, found Zcash, Monero, etc., and just kind of drifted towards Zcash by chance, and then got very lucky that I was able to start working on it.
Yeah, and you started the Zec Hub.
Zec Hub. Yeah, so my favorite education resource in Ethereum when I was learning about all this stuff was this thing called ETH Hub, created by Anthony Sassano and Eric Noir, and it's this kind of education place that was open source, so there was like contributors, and I was like, that seems pretty cool. And it was taking all this really technical information from like Ethereum.org and the doc sites and all these different projects within the Ethereum space, and kind of just breaking it down into like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sentence documentation pages. Because if you go into the Zcash education stuff at the time, it was all extremely dense and extremely technical. Yeah,
even in Z.cash doesn't have any follow step by step.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, I'm going to create step by step. If you're a normal person, because I'm a normal person, how to interact with like Zcash and use it on a mobile wallet, make sure it's shielded, make sure you're enjoying the privacy benefits of it. So I built these documentation pages, and I was like, well, I could open source it, right? And I was like, I could have people come in and contribute. To make that a step further, I was like, okay, I want to incentivize people, right? Because within like, this is a really interesting point. Within like an Ethereum and Bitcoin, you have a lot of people contribute for free. Because there is a amount of social clout you can get within those communities. So you're getting like a social currency. In Zcash, because it's not as widely well known or widely used, it doesn't have that same type of social clout. So you have to have a different incentivization model. People in Zcash maybe not as incentivized to work on the project to be like, I am contributing to Zcash. Just do, like that is, like in my opinion, there's less of a social reward there. So social reward being like people following you on Twitter, giving you shout outs, like contributing, kind of building your own personal brand, which can then help you get a job in the space type thing. So I was like, how can I incentivize people? And I'm like, well, Zcash is money, you know? I was like, let's create a bounty program that where when people come in, they complete a task and they complete some part of the ecosystem, they work on it, and then they can get paid.
And you was thinking in that moment about Zec Hub DAO, or just let's
create a system to make education really easy. Like there was a gap in the community, there was a need, there's more now, but I feel like I was maybe one of the first people to really start trying to like make the education resources really simple. I think there was a need in the community there, and do it in a way that like amplified that information to as many people as possible. So really leveraging like social media and things. I was also doing a podcast to get more people, like, and there were people like, you did a podcast, you did a news show, you did all these things. Like all this media was not to actually build media, it was to get people interested in Zec Hub so they would eventually come contribute. It was all like a Trojan horse with the whole podcast thing. I never wanted to do a podcast. It's just like, let's do a podcast to get followers, and then maybe like 3% of those followers will end up contributing. So that was really cool. So then I was like, okay, we need to.
And how you evaluate that? The feeling that people has is just, okay, I will contribute for the Zec Hub community, or just to earn money? How you feel that?
So I think in the initial, because it's only extending out to like people that I know in my network, it was very much like, and remember, this wasn't funded. This wasn't funded in the beginning. It was funded by like me and a few people who did donations. So we only ended up having like I think $1,000 worth in the treasury, and it's really hard to like give people bounties when you have that limited amount of money.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do it and send people stuff, but it was mainly just Zcash community members just contributing because they wanted to help. Very grassroots, very like a lot of people just doing it for free. What was happening was though, is I was working a lot. So I had my job at ECC and I had ZecHub, and people were like, why didn't you do these together? The reason I think, looking back on it now, is that I wanted ZecHub to continue existing if I quit working on Zcash, if someone else managing the project as like an individual quit working on Zcash. Like, you don't want to have that single point of failure, right? So I thought about, okay, what's a really interesting way that we could, you know, decentralize this? And it's not a DAO in like the literal sense of like it's using tokens to like dictate like like it's not on-chain governance really driving this thing, because obviously there's no like current integrations with like, you can't have like you can't do like token voting with Zcash and then have like some automated payment go out, because like let's say if 66% of people vote on this proposal, then the funds from the treasury get dispersed. You can't really do that with Zcash right now.
It's like a board of members.
Yeah, so it's kind of like this non-binding DAO that where they're doing token voting. We're using NFTs instead of like ERC20 tokens, because I wanted it to be like a one-for-one vote type experiment. And people in like the Brazilian and Spanish communities especially, they like POAPs and they like these different, you know, because I think they come from like the kind of like Ethereum aligned communities. So like, yeah, so they have this experience with using NFTs and POAPs. So they're like, oh, that's cool, that's like an interesting thing. So we created an NFT, we like made it the governance token, and it's non-binding, but every vote that has happened, the group managing has like done what that group of token voters said. So the reason like I did that was like, okay, I need to decentralize this, I need to do this in a way that people find interesting, and I need to do it in a way that like is different than everyone else. So I was like, okay, let's just make some tokens and do token voting.
And in that moment, you doesn't have any other project doing the same thing like
in Zcash. I mean, I think there was
in Zcash, right?
Yeah, there was some experiments of trying some stuff like it, but I think it was the most. It was the first one that kind of gained a lot more traction, and there's a number of reasons for that, but yeah. So we then like went, because obviously I was working at ACC, I was also working on this. It was a lot of time. I was working a lot to try and make sure that this got off the ground and the ECC stuff was going well. Had to decentralize it so it wouldn't die, like if I quit working on Zcash or if I got hit by a bus or something. And then had to do it in a way that was more community centric and like, let's make an experiment. Like let's experiment with this model. Like no one's done this yet in Zcash. Like let's see if this works. Yeah, and from there we had some more contributors kind of step in and start working on a lot of things a lot more. So Dismat and ZK Squirrel especially. And they were like, hey, let's eventually, after maybe 3 to 4 months of experimenting with the token voting and that, and more contributors coming in, it's like, hey, we need to fund this thing. This thing needs money. And I was getting so caught up in my ECC work, I ended up only spending like, I think an hour or 2 hours a week on ZecHub towards the end, because I was just like, I didn't have time. And people were like, we're not moving anywhere, we're not going anywhere with this. We have the single point of failure that we are trying to avoid. So then around after Christmas, we submitted a grants proposal to the Zcash Community Grants Program, and they gave us a grant of $80,000 to fund the core contributing team, partially cover some legal expenses, and then also there's now a bounty program where people can come in and, like I said, have that incentive of earning Zcash to contribute to the ecosystem. And we're seeing a lot of really cool models, like you asked earlier, who was like kind of contributing. In the beginning, it was just like people affiliated to Zcash, and now I think it's broadening out to like people who just kind of see the bounties and they want to complete them, and also people who want to get their start working in the crypto space. It's a really good way to like create some work and have a portfolio to potentially bring to other grants or other jobs that you might want to do in the future for like a resume. So we're seeing a whole host of people, but mostly related to the Zcash project.
Changing a little bit, in your talk you said about the privacy community, how community in Zec, you said about the Zotto thing that you had.
Yeah, I got in trouble for that.
Yeah, for me, I think I said to you, you said the right thing. I really believe that we need to make the community more participant, more, you know, you need to use Zcash, you need to use money. If it's money, we need to use.
Yeah, so I think the issue with Zodl, right, is like you're gonna have both.
Yeah.
You're gonna have in this new world where Zcash is more widely used, it's, you know, seeing more activity from a transaction perspective. People, like, you need to Zodl. Like, you can't have a world where every time you receive Zcash, we create a culture where people are just like, I have to spend this immediately, right?
First, it's because we came from Bitcoin, like with this mentality, right? Bitcoin, whoa, you buy the pizza, oh my god, you're so dumb.
Yeah, it's like if I spend it now at $30 a coin, am I gonna hate myself when it goes to like more, right? I understand that argument. So I think what most people should do is like, yeah, you hold the majority of your Zcash, whatever, but you earmark like, I don't know, 10, 20%, and you're like, I'm gonna like spend this and try to like drive more transaction volume to the network, and that's a personal decision I'm gonna make with my money. So my argument with the Zodl thing is if we continue to just Zodl, we end up in this situation where we have no transactions and no activity. And if you look at Josh Weihart's recent forum post on the state of ZEC adoption, it's very clear that Zodlers are adding to their stack, they're moving money into the shielded pool, but the price of Zcash versus Bitcoin is just like, it's just down tremendously.
Yeah.
So how do you ensure that we're growing the network and driving more value? And I think the way is to use Zcash as a medium of exchange. And I think if we're only Zodling, we're not driving any value and activity to the network. I think there's a couple faults of that. We're not making the platform more attractive for people to come in. We're not making it attractive for people to build on. So like, why would you build an application on Zcash if no one's actually using the network? So that's an issue. And I don't think it actually adds any value to the currency that you're holding itself, right? Because if we're all Zodling and we're using it and that's our main focus and that's kind of the meme around it, why is the price versus Bitcoin so down?
Yeah.
So I think if we can go in the other direction and kind of put more of an emphasis and a focus on using it, we can potentially we can change that trend and go in a more positive direction. So I'm not saying Zodling is quote unquote bad. I'm just saying that that's all we've ever done. So let's just like change the culture for a bit and get to a place where the network is more sustainable, more people are using Zcash, it has more utility, it's attractive and an attractive ecosystem for developers to build on. There's a financial incentivization to secure the network. Like, these are things that we can create by just doing, like, taking the small steps that we can today by just using it more in our day-to-day lives. Or even within our own online communities. You don't have to go buy your groceries with Zcash or buy your cup of coffee. You can just go and earmark 5, 10, 20% of your holdings and be like, I'm just going to spend this within the opportunities that I have available to me to spend it.
One last question, it's about Bitcoin and about the need of the money that the world needs. Our world needs a money, a kind of money that would be private, that would be usable, reliable, right? And for the Bitcoin maximalists, we got in this topic right now. Then try to add some privacy at second layer in Bitcoin, like the Lightning Network or the other stuff that I forgot. But then try to add some privacy before after Bitcoin is started, and we see these privacy coins like Zcash, Monero, Dash that started from the day one thinking about privacy. The question is, do you think that Zcash is the money that the world needs? And if not yet, what needs to be improved in Zcash? Or, for example, if you don't think that Zcash is the money, or what needs to be added in other technologies like Dash? What Dash needs, or what Monero needs to be real money? That's a hard question.
Yeah, very hard question. So let's break this down. The first question is, do I think Zcash is the money that the world needs? I would say no. No, because we don't really know how these experiments are going to play out in real time. Like, we're very early in people being able to, for example, use Zcash relatively easily on like mobile phones. So that's a huge like barrier to entry for like most people. It needs to be accessible on their local device where they can use it and use it easily. So we're very early in that. I think with regards to Bitcoin, I think like you have some interesting like arguments, right? So if you use Bitcoin and you never use KYC and you know how to do the various things to make your Bitcoin privacy better, like using coin joins and not mixing and combining UTXO sets, you can arguably have a relatively strong, you can have like a arguably strong level of privacy. And then those people are obviously using, the people who do that more so use Bitcoin as like a digital cash, like the idea of peer-to-peer digital cash. I kind of see that correlation. A lot of the people who care about Bitcoin privacy care more about spending. So I think, obviously if you're not using KYC, that could potentially be a good model, right? And then you have Monero, which is another community, which is a different set of trade-offs compared to Zcash, that they're very focused on using Monero for like peer-to-peer digital cash payments, censorship-resistant payments.
And I don't see people holding Monero.
I mean, the issue with that is like you still need to hold the asset to then spend it, right? Because the worst thing you can do is like take something from like a Bitcoin wallet, send it to Monero, and then like spend it immediately. Like maybe that's fine, but like you need to like typically hold like your cash. It's like the argument of like Bitcoin's a savings account and Monero's like your checking account. It's like you always have at least like a couple $100 in your checking account to spend. Like you're not trying to go from your savings to your checking every single day. So you always need to have some value there that's available to spend when you need it. So I think like they're very much focused on creating like circular economies and having that censorship resistant payment mechanism. And then you have Zcash, which is kind of, from a development perspective, probably has like a stronger cryptographic guarantees and privacy guarantees. But it's not as widely used, right? People aren't actively trying to go out and like build circular economies of Zcash. Like it's starting to happen, but it's not like a ecosystem-wide effort. So I think when these things start playing out, again, they're all experiments, and we don't know which one's going to win. So like Bitcoin has some interesting things, like it has FERRAMENTAs. I've heard people talking about doing sovereign rollups that have like Zcash level privacy on Bitcoin. You could, if you made some changes to the Bitcoin opcode, you could do like layer 2 rollups and then have like a shielded UTXO type rollup. Ethereum's having like layer 2s that are working on privacy stuff. You have stuff in the Cosmos ecosystem. We need to develop all of it, and as people in these ecosystems, not let our affiliations and our investments dictate the way we view these platforms, because they're all just tools, and we just need the best tools. Like, are we trying to create new asset classes and investments, or are we trying to build technologies that can help us potentially have a more democratic and accessible financial system? So my argument is, I don't think any single project is the money that we need. I think we need to test all of them and see which ones work the best. Like, for example, in my day-to-day life, I use Bitcoin much more than I use Monero or Zcash. I use Monero probably more than I use Zcash too, because that's just what's available to me when I want to spend, you know, these new types of money. I would like to use Zcash and Monero more than I use Bitcoin, but that's not kind of the current state in my current experience. So I need to use it, and I need to know how I can have more privacy on it. So I think we just need to develop everything, have different types of trade-offs, and also have the ability, if I'm in one ecosystem, to exit to another ecosystem. Like I said on the panel yesterday, if I don't like the Zcash Development Fund and the direction that a few of the organizations building on Zcash are going, I can easily sell my Zcash and then go opt into another ecosystem like Monero. So I think we need to develop these technologies. We need to have a sense of like collaboration between them. I'm really excited that some of the research that's been happening in Zcash might be potentially implemented on Monero. I think that's awesome, because it's not a zero-sum game, and in the end we just need to have the best set of technologies available to us. And I think if we have that type of, and people might say that, oh, that's not good for like the Zodlers or the people who've invested in Zcash and indirectly or directly have like funded Ian's salaries and grants and things that Ian's worked on. I would disagree with that, because I'm going into these other ecosystems and using their applications and learning how they kind of interact, and I can learn that and I can try to bring that back to this ecosystem. So that's why this weekend I'm saying, let's quit using the word Zodl, because the other ecosystems that are more successful in us in driving adoption are not having that type of mentality. So let's shift away to a spending mentality and a using mentality to get more usage on the network, which would then drive the price up and help the ZODLers. So it's all about helping just the ecosystem.
And when the ZODLers were helped, they quit because they are ZODLing. When the price goes up, probably
so
they're going to sell.
I mean, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, but like, that is, right, what's your incentive?
But that is the community that we need.
What's your incentive alignment, right? Like, I don't think buying on Coinbase and then selling it at a higher price, for example, is a bad thing. But it also cannot be what's driving, like, the development in the ecosystem. I think Ethereum is a really good example for that. I think Vitalik once said, like, the price of ETH isn't as important as people building applications and driving value to the Ethereum network. And because tons of people build really cool stuff on Ethereum, then it gets a lot of users and a lot of traction, and then that helps, like, the price of ETH go up. So it's just about getting the network used more, which is going to help the people who just want to invest anyways. So if you care about your money going up relative to fiat that you denominate your savings in, you're still going to want people using the network and building applications, and so you want to advance the narrative that ZODLing is not the way forward for the time being.
So last thing, send your message to Brazil, to Privacy Map community. It's your time.
My message would be, learn about everything. See how people talk about these technologies, interact with them. On the privacy side of things, it's all about getting started. I do not have perfect privacy habits. My digital privacy is much better than it was, let's say, 2 to 3 years ago. So it's all about getting started. It's very easy to, like, see someone who has extremely good, like, OPSEC and they have extremely good privacy practices, and you're like, I want to jump to that immediately, but it's a journey. So take the first step in the right direction. Like, downloading Signal or Session is a great thing to start. Instead of using WhatsApp, use Signal. Great way to start. Try to onboard more people around you and have them care about privacy, and just don't be scared when people try to say that privacy is only for criminals or something like that. And if that's people's view of the world, then it's just going to be really hard to change that. And just know that that's not the truth, and just keep doing what you want to do, and just have more individual freedom and sovereignty. So that would be just take the first step in the right direction. Download Signal, download Session, get out, like, I mean, I still have a Gmail account, but, like, create another account, create a Proton account, use that as much as you can. Earn some Zcash, earn some Monero, earn some Bitcoin, run a transaction, experience what acquiring crypto as permissionally as possible without KYC and running that type of private transaction actually feels like. Cool. Like I was saying, go into an ecosystem, try to acquire Zcash, try to acquire Monero, try to acquire non-KYC Bitcoin, use it, run that type of private transaction, and just let that be your first step in the right direction. So relative to, like, digital privacy, stop using Gmail as much, stop using WhatsApp as much.
It's about choice, right?
It's about choice, and just take the first step. It's not about being, like, this completely off the grid person who has, like, the highest level of, like, individual sovereignty. It's about getting there, and that's a journey for all of us, and we have to take that in our own data. We have to take that on our own accord, on our own choices.
Thank you.
Of course, man. Obrigado.
A great interview, ótima entrevista. Nossa, cara, muito gente boa, ótimo bate-papo. E aí eu vou deixar as redes sociais do Ian aqui na descrição. Você usa mais o Twitter, certo?
Sim, mais em Twitter, Ian Sagstetter.
Vou deixar o Twitter dele aqui embaixo, quem quiser acompanhar o trabalho dele. Ele está trabalhando também na Espresso Systems,
Systems.
O que vocês fazem por lá?
Em Espresso Systems estamos construindo uma coisa...
You could talk in English.
We're building a thing called a decentralized shared sequencer. So if you're interested in kind of how roll-ups are thinking about decentralizing and also becoming more interoperable with each other, come to our website and read about what we're building.
Então tá aí, pessoal. Esse foi o Ian, muito obrigado. Deixe seu like, comente, enfim, aproveite aqui embaixo para interagir conosco. Valeu, pessoal, e até mais.
Obrigado.